I listen to every single Bob Dylan studio album. In case you haven't seen my other video, I just saw Bob Dylan live. But leading up to that, I listened to all 40 Bob Dylan albums for 40 days straight, one a day, back to back, in reverse chronological order. I had heard most of them before, but there were a few that I hadn't, and to build momentum and to finally listen to all of them, I set out the 40 days before the concert to take them one by one and see what they had to offer. And I'm going to tier list them today. I do stand hard for this ranking on a lot of these right now, and I am highly skeptical that my views will change on some of them, but it's not set in stone. Take this all with a grain of salt because, you know, maybe in 10 years I'll go back and do this again and it'll be a completely different list. So I'm going to do this in reverse chronological order, starting with his most recent work and ending with his oldest. I actually think that Bob Dylan is maybe just as good a songwriter now as he ever was. Oftentimes what determines the quality of a Bob Dylan album is the production. And you know, I say this as a producer, but there's a clear difference in the albums where you can tell it's just kind of like Bob doing his thing and the producer's just kind of letting Bob do his thing, between a producer who gets in there with a vision and says, we are going to make something great, we are going to do some interesting things, we are going to be creative, the two of us are going to work together hard to make a great piece of work. When you have a vision, an album is better. And there are several albums in each decade that have vision. So let's start off with his most recent work, Shadow Kingdom. If you don't know, Shadow Kingdom was released a few years ago, and it's all modern takes on various older songs of his throughout different decades. This album has a very similar feeling to when he does a classic song live. It's a unique arrangement with his gravelly, dog-like voice, and I think it is actually really cool. I do genuinely like this album. It's not my favorite, and I will say that, like, sure, if I want to listen to these songs, I'm probably going to listen to the original, but that is not to say that there are not some great takes on some of these songs. I really liked the arrangement of What Is It You Wanted. So ultimately, like, this album is not, you know, like a staple by any means, but I would say it's pretty enjoyable, and with that I am putting it in the B tier. By the way, first of all, I'm gonna add one more category, which is A+. Bob Dylan has a lot of great music, and I will not lie to you that I know exactly where all of these albums are going. This is not an on-the-spot thing. There are albums that I feel like are all deserving of A tier, but there's a line in that collection where the albums get a lot better. Also, what's important to know is I'm going to try to rank these, whereas the very first and top album is my absolute favorite, and the very bottom is my absolute least, and everything in between is in order like that. But sometimes, you know, with judging albums, especially in the same tier, it can be hard. You know, sometimes you like this one more one day, sometimes you like another. So all of this is subject to change because the tiers, they are a-changin'. Who Threw That Glass in the Street? Alright, on to the next album, Rough and Rowdy Ways. While this one is not my absolute favorite, what can I say? I do love this album. I think it's great. I think this one's a little bit underrated, to be honest. I think it is just so stone cold. It's mellow, it's sinister. His voice sounds so unique and cool on it. And the writing is just so poetic and beautiful. And I just think a great kind of reflection on Bob Dylan's career at this late stage in his life, a great reflection on him as an artist, great reflection on his spirituality, on the love in his life, just a very personal, intimate, meditative reflection from a lonely old hermit Bob Dylan. I would say the standout track for me is I Contain Multitudes. A lot of these songs are really great. False Prophet is great. My Own Version of You is great. I could do without Murder Most Foul, the 16-minute long song about JFK getting assassinated. However, I will say that it is on disc 2, and it was a single released before then, and therefore I don't really consider it as part of the album. I kind of just consider it as a thing tacked on to the album for sales, and I really consider the album just disc 1. And that is more of a bonus track. Do I say that just to protect myself from liking it a little less so I don't have to make myself listen to Murder Most Foul because it's not that good? Maybe. But I can do whatever the fuck I want, just like Bob Dylan. So I'm putting it in A. And in a huge drop in quality, we got Triplicate. So Triplicate is the third installment of his jazz crooner phase. And not only is it the third album in the trilogy of jazz crooner albums, but it is also 3 discs. This thing is an hour and a half long. I'm gonna get to the other jazz albums after this. I have a lot of good things to say about Dylan doing this style, but it's not good enough to be an hour and a half. It's just not. And especially after 2 albums of him doing the exact same thing, this album is just not fun to listen to. I would so much rather listen to the other 2 than this. And the other 2, while I do think are pretty good, it's not like it's something I'm gonna want to put on every single day. It's a very specific mood, and this one just beats the idea into the ground, and it is one of the least enjoyable Bob Dylan albums to listen to, and for that reason I have to put it in D. This is one of his worst to me. And it's not to say that the songs are bad, it's just that none of the songs are exciting, and it's way too long. All of the songs feel incredibly similar to one another, and they all just kind of have the same formula, and the formula works. Just not for this long, and not after 2 albums of basically the same formula. It's just so uninteresting, and that's why it's going in D. Alright, next, Fallen Angels, I think is solid, but it's just that. Like, it's just fine. I can maybe hear a little bit of a difference in the kind of sonic palette. Like, maybe there might be a little more, like, pedal steel in there, if I'm hearing that correctly. It's not quite the beating a dead horse that Triplicate is, but it's still just a little bit unexciting. And for that reason, I gotta put it in C. All right, Shadows in the Night. So it is interesting, right? Like, I wonder if I would like Fallen Angels more if it was the first one, but maybe not. I think Shadows in the Night is a good, solid album. I would put it in B tier. I noticed that it seems really hard to like find your place as an older musician, and like a musician kind of past their prime. I think many artists that I've seen really struggle to kind of like know how they fit in at an old age as kind of a rock star. I think some artists have found really wonderful ways to make it work. I think the best example is Johnny Cash. I think that his later albums are just so beautiful. Granted, that was with the help of Rick Rubin, who was able to encourage him to kind of get back to his roots. And I don't think that what Bob Dylan is doing here is like the method for everyone, but I think it is definitely an interesting idea to acknowledge, hey, I'm old, I'm not making like the fun, vibrant, you know, youthful rock music that I was able to. I'm just going to cover a bunch of old songs from my childhood and preserve them, and also acknowledge that I'm somewhat of a relic of the past while still continuing to create and get in touch with yourself and do new interesting things. I do really love the just like smooth production on this album. It's a solid album, and for that I have it in B tier. Okay, Tempest. This album has the most boring mixes and boring production of maybe any album I've ever heard. So here's the thing, the songwriting might be good. I'm a sound first kind of person when I listen to music. I definitely, you know, I have lots of appreciation for Dylan as a songwriter, but like, if you're not selling me with the music, I don't really care about the lyrics on first listen. I haven't like really locked in, like I haven't like read all the lyrics on this album. I'm sure it's great. Most of these songs, his voice is just mixed so loud, and it doesn't sound good. Like, I think albums like Rough and Rowdy Ways, they kind of figured out the right tones of the guitars and the right way to mix his voice so it kind of sounds nice and pleasant over the instruments. I just don't think they figured out how to do that yet with Triplicate, and it just is boring to me. It's just incredibly boring. I wish they did more creative stuff with the mix, and I just don't think it sounds very pleasant to listen to, and it's long. It's just long. It overstays its welcome for me. I would say it's not quite as frustrating as Triplicate, but it's close. Okay, Christmas in the Heart. I would say the best thing this album has going for it is the backup singers. There's these 2 female backup singers. They make the album so cool and unique. There is a really cool vintage quality to these Christmas covers. His voice is a little hit or miss, but I do kind of appreciate it for its vintage snowman, baby it's cold outside kind of quality. It's very rough. Sometimes it doesn't quite work, you know, Must Be Santa. Maybe not the first album I'm putting on, you know, come Christmas season, but it's not bad. And there's some really beautiful moments on it. Yeah, the backup singers definitely steal the show for me. And for that, I am putting it in C tier. I think I might like Fallen Angels a little bit more. Fallen Angels is maybe a little more consistent, but yeah, both in C tier. C tier is not bad, by the way. C tier is like a fine listen. All right, Bob Dylan, Together Through Life. One of his most forgettable albums, to be honest. I don't remember a lot about it. I've only listened to it once and it didn't really stick out to me. I remember there's one song that was like really horny that I actually like, I ended up kind of winning me over at the end. It can be weird to hear Bob Dylan's gravelly old man voice, you know, sing about lust. It doesn't infuriate me like Triplicate does, and it doesn't bore me to death like Tempest and Triplicate, but it's still one that like I don't foresee myself ever really having the urge to go back to, unless I'm, you know, trying to get through another marathon or maybe trying to give it a second chance. But like, I don't have anything really drawing me back to it, so I'm putting it in high D. All right, Modern Times. General public discourse on this is like pretty positive to this album, and I think it is pretty good. Wouldn't say it's my absolute favorite. I've listened to this one twice now. The first time I listened to it, I was kind of won over by it because of how much better it was than Tempest and Triplicate, honestly. But I will say on second listen, it did really fail to move me. I think it's well written. I think it's well made. I don't think any of the songs are bad, but it's a little tame. I could see this one being an album that I develop more affection for as time goes on. Right now, after 2 listens, it's not my absolute favorite, but it is still pretty solid. And for that, I am putting it in B tier, maybe a little bit above Shadows in the Night. But honestly, they're kind of interchangeable. Ladies and gentlemen, a second plane has hit the second tower, and Bob Dylan just released a new studio album. This album came out on 9/11 and is still the worst thing to happen that day. Kidding, I'm kidding. I actually kind of like this album. I wouldn't say it's quite as good as Modern Times, but there's some good songs on here. I like the High Water track. Some great songwriting, some cool ideas, definitely better produced than some of his other albums. It doesn't quite stick out to me as one of his best, personally. Unlike this fucking masterpiece right here, Time Out of Mind. Okay, this is our first A+, and honestly, in time, might make it up to S tier. I've heard it 2 or 3 times now. I was putting this album off for so long. I'd heard it was good, I knew it won the Grammy for Album of the Year, but every time I just kind of like skimmed through it lightly to just like see what the sound was, I was unimpressed. I didn't like his voice. Based on the little bits, the little tastes of it that I had, I was never convinced that I was going to enjoy it. I put it on for the first time, and Lovesick came on, and I was blown away. This is probably the clearest example of Bob Dylan is best when he works with a great producer. The production and the mixing on this album is... This album probably contains his most like creative mixes, and Lovesick is just like the perfect intro. It's so cool. The just the guitar playing, the groove of it, the mix, it's all so good. And then the writing is so deep and poetic and profound. Oh, I fucking love this album. It's so good. If you want to hear me talk about how much Trying to Get to Heaven live changed my life, watch the video that I did on seeing him live. Not Dark Yet is a beautiful, haunting ballad. And then what I gotta say is I think my favorite track, Highlands, is so good. Maybe when I was talking about Triplet, you were like, oh, this Gen Z motherfucker right here has short, you know, Subway Surfers, Family Guy ad, short attention ad. I'm all for a long album or a long song if you earn it. Highlands earns it. And it's not even like it earns it by like switching up the instrumental a lot. It's the same instrumental loop for 15 minutes. It's not like it's continuing to evolve and change, but the writing and the storytelling on this song is so entertaining. It's so interesting. It's so funny. And it's also just like such a good groove that like, why not listen to it for 15 minutes? I just fall in love with the storytelling on this song every time. The little scene with the waitress is just one of the best moments in like any Dylan song for me. It's kind of mysterious. There's a surface level tone to it that maybe feels a bit like comedy, but underneath it, I really do think there's some like interesting ideas and some interesting implications into what he's saying. I think this one's going to continue to grow with me, and I am actually not mad that I put it off for so long, because I think it found me at the right time. This is A+, might bring up to S tier in time, but yeah. World Gone Wrong, I actually didn't know this. This is all covers. I didn't even realize this was covers until after listening to it a few times. This is kind of back, you know, a return to form for doing just like singer-songwriter, acoustic, man and a guitar folk music. He did 2 albums like this, World Gone Wrong and Good As I've Been to You. I'll actually kind of rank these at the same time. They are pretty similar. I would say that World Gone Wrong is a little bit better. I think the songs are just a little bit stronger, but I would put them both in C tier. I'd say this is like high C tier. And then this one is a little bit lower. My favorite song on Good As I've Been to You is the outro, Froggy Been a Courtin' or whatever. It's like a novelty kids song, but I think it's really cute and really fun. Definitely like the type of song that I feel like I'd, you know, love to sing to my kids in the future. I think World Gone Wrong is just like a little bit more poetry to it, a little more darkness. Also, the guitar playing on both of these, but especially on Good As I've Been to You, is just like it's a little sloppy. And I wouldn't say that that's a huge problem, but it's not quite as tight as some of his early folk albums. Ultimately, these are his 2, you know, worst selling albums, and not that album sales, you know, dictate how good the album is, but it makes sense that these are at the bottom because they're not totally that exciting. Interesting time in Dylan's life when he's just kind of like going back to his roots a little bit before really coming into his own again on Time Out of Mind. But clearly he's not trying to make, you know, another Times They Are A-Changin' with these 2 albums. Under the Red Sky is maybe even more boring than Triplicate. Triplicate is boring, but none of the songs are bad. They're just not that great. Under the Red Sky has a few bad songs. Wiggle Wiggle is the obvious one that, you know, I'd known about for a bit, and it's just so like uncomfortably kind of hideous. But the whole album is just so uninteresting. I was reading up on this album a little bit, and he wasn't even really trying. He had no like camaraderie with his instrumentalists. He was just kind of like in and out, and the production leaves a lot to be desired on this album. It's just boring, and that is why it's going at the bottom of D for now. But Oh Mercy, great. Maybe just slightly behind Rough and Rowdy Ways, but all he needs is just a good producer, and this album is amazingly produced. I mean, like the reverb on the vocals and the harmonica and the instruments, just like, it's so cool. And the songwriting, dude, most of the time is quintessential Dylan. It is amazing, heartbreaking, deeply clever, so good songwriting. Yeah, this album is great. I would say if you're gonna listen to any album from the 80s, listen to Oh Mercy. He has one more 80s album that I'm a pretty big fan of, but I will agree that even if maybe the highlights on that album resonate with me a little more, I think this album is much more consistent than the other one. So, Oh Mercy, A tier. Alright, Down in the Groove. This album, I think, is slightly underrated. First of all, I would actually say this might be his best album cover. If you haven't noticed, a lot of these album covers look like shit. Some are worse than others, but I would say, you know, I'm not saying this is like contender for, you know, best album cover of all time, but I kind of like the lighting on this picture. But we're not here to rate album covers, we're here to rate the music, and I think this one isn't great, but has some good songs on it. Absolutely crazy that he has his wife singing backup vocals about being in love with the ugliest girl in the world. There's some entertaining songs on this one. Some of the ballads are cool. Very 80s, but not quite as campy 80s as a few of the albums we're going to get to in a second. I would say the 80s production definitely holds it back a bit. It's a solid album, one of the better ones from the decade, but still not great, and that's why I'm going to put it in C tier. Hey, remember how I was just saying how like the Down the Groove cover was like one of the better covers on here? Get ready for the worst album artwork you have ever seen in your life with Knocked Out Loaded. Look, a few good songs on this one. I like They Killed Him, but it's lazy. It's lazy, bro. You can tell he's not putting his all into this thing. Even They Killed Him, which is one of my favorite songs on the album, the writing is just not up to par. It's just drenched in like these 80s drums and reverbs, and it's okay. There's a few good moments on it, but it's definitely one of his weaker albums. I'd still put it in C tier. Might be a little better than some of these, but yeah, it's not my favorite. But I don't think it's horrendous. I have a very similar feeling on Empire Burlesque. Dark Eyes is really good, and some of the songwriting I would say on here is better than on Knocked Out Loaded, but it's still just like, this album is very 80s. It just doesn't really stand the test of time. And for that reason, I am putting it at the bottom of C. But you know, those albums are largely inoffensive. They're dated, but there's a few good songs here and there. If that's the mood you're in, put it on. They don't come nearly to the point of infuriating me the way that Infidels does. I absolutely hate Infidels. I listened to this one years ago, and I didn't like it then. When I did this 40 albums thing, I gave it another chance. I went into it with an open mind. I thought, you know what? I still don't love 80s Dylan, but it's grown on me a little bit. Maybe I was wrong. No. This album sucks, dude. And even Bob, I think, said he's not the hugest fan of this album. It just sounds bad, dude. It just sounds so bad. I don't even know what to say about it. Like, there's not like, some of the slower songs are okay. There's a cut song from it called, like, Blind Willie McTell or something. Amazing song. I don't know how that didn't end up on this album. Although, I'm kind of glad that it didn't, because maybe the rest of it is just so dog shit that it would have, you know, ruined how I felt about that one. Yeah, man. This album just sucks, dude. It's pathetic. His voice sounds worse than it ever has sounded. It's dated. I can't talk about this album anymore. It just sucks, and it's my absolute least favorite. Spoilers, it's at the absolute bottom of D tier. I just hate this album, and I think some people like Joker Man. Why? Like, what do you see in... Honestly, if you're watching this video and you like Infidels, tell me why. And don't be condescending. Don't be mean. This is just an opinion, bro. But I genuinely want to hear what you hear in Infidels. Like, what you see in it, why you appreciate it. If you like Infidels, please let me know, like, what it is about it. Okay. To the Christian trilogy. Shot of Love, C tier. Maybe a little bit better than Knocked Out Loaded, but maybe not quite as good as Fallen Angels. A few really good songs, but a lot of just like kind of meh. I think I can really appreciate some of the things he's trying to do on this album, and I know this might be a hot take, it's my least favorite of the three. And even Every Grain of Sand, like, I can appreciate the writing on that song, and it was cool to see it live, but it doesn't have the beauty and intimacy that are on some of the ballads on Saved, which I actually think is a great album, and for me, it goes in A tier. One other thing I did want to say about Shot of Love, though, is he has spoken out about how he feels Shot of Love is potentially his most underrated album. And I can kind of see what he was trying to do. I can kind of like see the, you know, why he likes it so much, but to me, it just doesn't, it's held back a little bit by maybe some of the styles of the time. It's not bad, it doesn't really grip me. But Saved, I would say that Saved has some of the same problems as Shot of Love on the energetic songs. On the rockier numbers, sure, it can get a little bit corny at times, but those ballads, man, bro. What Can I Do For You is genuinely a top 10 Dylan song for me. Honestly, like, one of the most beautiful gospel songs I've ever heard. A Satisfied Mind is a cover, but it is such a strong way to open the album. His little, like, as the song is kind of rising, it just sounds so good. Satisfied Mind is just such a well-written song. Like, I just love that song. The Johnny Cash version is also really good. The other big favorite of mine is Covenant Woman. The song's very much like, I found a good Christian girl, which is kind of like a funny topic to write a song about, I guess. It's hard. What can I say? The bass line is so good on it. I just really like this album. So I don't know if it's quite as good as Oh Mercy. This album is, while very hit or miss, one of the most personally special to me as a former Christian. So Slow Train Comin', I don't personally think is quite as good as Saved, but I do think it's better than Shot of Love. Obviously, Gotta Serve Somebody, Banger! Man gave names to all the animals. I think this album maybe lacks a bit of a personal touch. It maybe isn't quite as preachy as Saved, but I think it is more theological than Saved. And Saved does have more moments of genuine, like, personal reflections on God, whereas this one seems a little bit more like, there's whores in the world. There's a touch of that, like, conservative evangelical just tone in some of the lyrics that is somewhat funny, but can also be a little bit like, ugh. So there's some great songs on this one. What's the one that's like, I don't want to touch anyone, I don't want to be touched, or whatever it is. That little like, duh, duh. Hard. Gotta Serve Somebody is like, the writing is so simple, but it's one of his best, just like simple, standard formula for the whole song type tracks. And I would put it in B. Great songs, some that are not quite as good, but still a generally enjoyable listening experience. Before the concert, I went with this guy, and he was talking shit on Street Legal. And he was talking shit on New Pony. New Pony? We do not stand for New Pony slander in this house, okay? In this house, we believe New Pony is great, and Self-Portrait is S tier. New Pony is one of the coolest Bob Dylan songs of all time. Bro, the gospel backing vocals on this song are so cool, dude. I also do like the album cover of this one, so rare Bob Dylan W on that. It's not his best, but I do love the touches of gospel in the track. Really interesting album in retrospect, as like this is the last album before his Christian trilogy, and you can definitely hear both sonically and lyrically kind of glimpses of that about to come out. I love the grooves on this thing. Not one of Dylan's favorites, but and I can maybe see how some of the recordings could sound better, but I do quite like this album, and for that I am putting it in low A. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't noticed, we've been filling up all these spots, but there's one tier that we have not touched yet, and that is S tier. And for the first time, we have an album that is deserving of that degree. All the albums that I'm putting in S tier today, not one of them is like my favorite. I think on any given day, one of them can end up being my favorite. I will say that Desire is maybe not a 10 out of 10 album. I think that there's one or two songs that aren't quite as good as the rest, specifically the ones with, not that they're bad, I kind of like them, I think they're endearing, but the ones with kind of like a Spanish, like a Latin flair, they're a little bit corny, but it's still fun. It's not like, I want to meet your madre, to my respects to your padre, por favor. You know, like Drake. It's not like quite that territory. But enough being negative, okay? This album has some of the best, absolute best songs of Dylan's entire career. One More Cup of Coffee for the Road might very well be my favorite Bob Dylan song of all time. Isis, Oh Sister, Joey, and to me, I would say that this album is his most musically ambitious. The instrumentalists on this album are locked in. The drummer is amazing. The violin makes the album what it is. This album actually, it was co-written with another writer, which I think is interesting, but hey, the writing is, I think, phenomenal. I mean, I think the writing on One More Cup of Coffee is, I just love One More Cup of Coffee. The writing on this album is amazing. It's musically ambitious, it's riveting, it's exciting, and it's honestly like one of my favorite albums of all time. Definitely one of my favorite Bob Dylan albums. So for that reason, Desire is going in S tier. We got our first S tier, ladies and gentlemen. All right, next up we got the Basement Tapes. So Basement Tapes is a collab project with The Band. If you don't know The Band, they are a iconic classic rock band that used to tour with Bob Dylan. Go listen to music from Big Pink. It is one of the best classic rock albums that I've ever heard in my life. So my feeling about this album is the intention very much feels like to me to just kind of throw everything that they were working on a project and just like take from it what you like. And it's not so much trying to make like this epic cohesive masterpiece, because I don't want to like judge it to be something that it's not, right? and I just don't think it's trying to be like Dylan's best album. And with that, I think it calls for you to just kind of just take songs that you really enjoy from it. With that being said, I think that it is still consistently a really good album across the board. Most of the songs are strong and fun to listen to, but there's a few on there that are just like top notch, dude. I don't know if Dylan's playing an instrument on it, but he's definitely not singing. But my absolute favorite is Yazoo Street Scandal. What Gen Z thinks Playboi Carti sounds like is like what like people in the 70s had to have thought that like this sounded like. It just is so cool, dude. Oh man, it's so infectious and interesting. It's just such like a cool, just like gritty, like fun rock song. It's so simple, but it's so good. Clothesline Saga, I really like. The Long Distance Operator. I honestly think that like the band just really shines on this album. And a lot of what I like about it is from the band rather than Dylan. Not to say I don't like what Dylan's doing. To me, the band definitely is like what makes this album special. And I actually think when Dylan writes for the band to sing, sometimes it's better than he could do himself. I Shall Be Released at the end of Music from Big Pink. Dylan wrote that song, and the songwriting is phenomenal. Same with Tears of Rage. But I think the band on Music from Big Pink does it even better. And there's a Bob Dylan version of Tears of Rage on here, but I think the band version is even better. So that's not to say that I like the band generally more than Bob Dylan, but I think when they work together and he lets the band shine, it's like match made in heaven. Yeah, this album is good. Not like every song is, you know, A S tier, but there's a few that are some of my absolute favorites. But because it is pretty long, and because it is a little bit inconsistent, I'll throw it in B. I will put it above Shadow Kingdom. It doesn't feel quite fair to put it in A, because there are many songs that I, you know, maybe wouldn't go back to. This album is a great listen, and even if you're just picking the songs that like you really like from it, has a lot of great material. Yeah, shout out the band. If you don't listen to the band, listen to the band. Take a load off, Fanny. Take a load for free. Damon Gruen, we went to the show together. Please do a cover of The Wait With Me by the band. It is my life's wish. Okay, are you ready for my first disgustingly hot take? Blood on the Tracks is B tier. I know. Blood on the Tracks is a fan favorite. It's his best-selling album. In fact, I went to the concert, and we were sitting behind a group of people, maybe in their 60s or 70s. They were telling us about how when Blood on the Tracks came out, you could hear it in every apartment building just going down the street in the summer of the year that it came out. And I think that's beautiful. I think there's some really great songs on this album. It just doesn't really do it for me, like to the level that I think it does for everyone else. If you love Blood on the Tracks, I really want you to tell me why. I really want you to like explain what's so great about it, because I don't think it's bad. Right now it's in B, you know, it's no Infidels. It's not like we're in D tier. And I do like it, you know, I like it better than all these albums that have come before it. I think Simple Twist of Fate is great. The dynamics on that song are really beautiful. Meet Me in the Morning is another one of my favorites. His voice sounds really good on those two songs, but I don't know, like the Jack of Hearts song, I don't know, man. It's just like, it sounds like really hokey. And it's long and just doesn't really earn it to me. I don't really see the absolute greatness that it seems like a lot of other people see in it. I'm sure one big thing that a lot of people are going to point to is the lyrics. And yeah, like that's valid. That's fair. But what can I say? I'm a sound first person. You gotta win me over with the sound first. And I don't think the sound on here is bad, but I think it's just not quite as good as some of the other albums. So if you're pissed off about that, just wait. We have a few more hot takes coming up that are sure to potentially make you even more mad. All right, Planet Waves is one that my opinion might always be changing on, because I think this has some of Dylan's absolute best material, but then also there's some moments that feel really weak to me. The mixing and the production on this album feel like really hollow to me, and I think it just like lacks a certain oomph on a lot of the songs. Now, a huge exception to that is the track Something There's About You. Something There's About You is definitely one of my favorite Bob Dylan songs. I think that Something There's About You is about God. And I think that it starts out as a love song to a girl, but then it like turns into this thing about maybe an attraction or a love with this girl is throwing him back in time to this thing that feels ancient, and that is like drawing him to the source, if you will. But he's like hesitant to fully commit to God and to faith. You know, there's the line like, I could say that I'd be faithful, I could say it in one sweet easy breath, but to you that would be cruelty, and to me it surely would be death. Now, there's definitely a layer of this that is about a woman, for sure. But I really strongly believe that it goes deeper. And if you are a Dylan head and you're like, actually, it's about this because in blah, 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 he said blah, 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 blah. Shut the f up. This song is special to me because it sounds great, but also because this is how I interpret the lyrics. This is how I relate to and resonate with the lyrics. And especially resonated to the lyrics when I was a Christian and found this song. I don't want to hear another interpretation because art is allowed to have different interpretations. This is the interpretation I've chosen for the song, and that is what speaks to me the most, and therefore I love it, and it is one of the best Bob Dylan songs of all time. But with that being said, there are a few tracks on this album that just don't quite live up to that. The song, what is it, like Diggery or Diggery, like the Latin guitar sounding one, I think is like really cool. I just wish it was like mixed better. Forever Young is solid, but it's a little like cheesy graduation-y, you know? I like Going, Going, Gone a lot, but I would say honestly, like maybe the worst of it is I really just don't like the intro track. I think Something There's About You would have been a much stronger opening track, but still a solid album. Some great songs, some great writing. I'm putting it in B tier. I would say I maybe like it a little bit more than Blood on the Tracks, but I would say especially B tier. These all, the ranking here is pretty loose. Yeah. Okay, are you ready for my second giant hot take? Dylan is A+. This album is one of the ones that gets hated on the most. Dylan didn't even co-sign the release of this album. This was put together by the label. It's all covers. They're all outtakes from his previous 2 albums, not the soundtrack to Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, but to New Morning and Self-Portrait. The first time I listened to the album, I didn't know any of that. I didn't know that every song was a cover. I knew some of them, like, you know, Can't Help Falling in Love, like, I knew that song, obviously, and like Big Yellow Taxi, but I didn't know every song was a cover, and I didn't know that the album was put out by the label without Bob Dylan's, like, input. But I think these songs are amazing, and especially I love the mix on these, dude. I love the production. This is what I keep saying. I love the production. There is such a warm, like analog, distorted quality to this that is so punchy and beautiful. A lot of these tracks sound like damn near like hip-hop samples. It's so punchy. Sarah Jane, bro. Sarah Jane, bro. Drunken Ira Hayes, beautiful. Spanish is a Loving Tongue. Man, this album is just so good. So underrated, dude. I love the punchy quality of it. I think it's such a fun album to listen to. I had heard this one a while ago, and I thought it was like fine. It didn't really speak to me much when I listened to it for the first time in like 2021, but was cooking at 11:30 in the morning. I put this on, got a little hot. It kicked in a little earlier than I expected, and what can I say? It was such a fun listening experience. If you're into like that kind of soulful late 60s, early 70s band sound, especially I would say if you kind of like the sound of them like in hip-hop samples, it just has that quality to it, and it's such an enjoyable listening experience. All right, Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. You know, I kind of want to be like gentle with this one because it's the soundtrack. Still, I mean, like, Knocking on Heaven's Door is obviously great. I also love Final Theme. There's a few instrumental songs on this that I think are really punchy, but it's a soundtrack album. I think I'd maybe put this on at a time where, like, I wanted my life to feel soundtracked in a way. Maybe in like the right setting, kind of in like a westerny type place. But yeah, I think this album is good, but it's not my absolute favorite. It's just not necessarily something that I am always going to put on, even though there are some like really good songs on there, but I'm going to put it in B tier. New Morning. This one is pretty well respected. It has The Man in Me, which is made very famous by the scene from The Big Lebowski, but it also has If Not For You, which was later covered by George Harrison, and then also apparently someone else, but that had like a big hit with it, but I don't know. Day of the Locusts, Went to See the Gypsy. This is definitely one that's like, the enjoyment depends on like the mood a little bit. Like if it's the kind of like the vibe you're in, you might enjoy it a lot more than if it's not. It's just a fun album with some great songwriting, and that is why I'm going to put it in high A. Okay. Here's the real reason why I wanted to make this video. Self-Portrait, I think, is S tier. Self-Portrait is quite possibly my favorite Bob Dylan album. This album is another one that is like pretty universally talked down on. It didn't sell well, and Bob eventually, claimed that he made it as a joke, but I don't buy it, man. This album is beautiful. Picture this, right? Fresh off the 60s, he has been touring for years. He has been through public scrutiny after going electric. He's acclaimed as the songwriter of his generation. He has all of this expectation on him to continue to make this prolific, outstanding, breathtaking, culturally defining music. And he's just tired. He's burnt out. And he starts an album off with an orchestral number with these background singers that hauntingly sing, "All the tired horses in the sun. How am I supposed to get any riding done?" But they kind of pronounce it like writing. And it's just this beautiful, swelling orchestral number about being burnt out and not knowing how to live up to the expectations and put on your name. And then what follows that are these really interesting takes on other people's songs. There's a few songs that he wrote, but overall it's this kind of act of defiance of like, I'm just gonna do songs I love. And I love the idea of an album being called Self-Portrait that is largely made up of songs that other people wrote, and shows off his influences in a way. And I think one thing that Dylan doesn't get a lot of credit for is he's regarded as like this great songwriter, right? Especially when he's working on a song that he didn't write, it forces him to focus purely on the sound. And through that method, I think he does some of the most like riveting music that he's ever made. I think that this album is the absolute pinnacle of that. I think it just sounds so cool. There's even a moment, I forget what song, but like there's even a moment where you can kind of hear him go like, "Ooh," before they stop recording. And it's like, yeah, they're feeling this because it's good, because it's so good. There's a few moments on this album that are really silly. Like there's like, what, 3 renditions of the song Little Sadie, or it's like, "With 44 smokeless under my head." And like there's these different iterations of that song, and it's a little, it's a little goofy, but it makes it more fun to listen to. Like there is a sense of humor to the album at the same time that I think makes it what it is as well, and makes it entertaining. But then, it'll cut to like a beautiful cover of The Boxer, or even a beautiful country rendition of Like a Rolling Stone. I just love this album. I think this is like peak of the country era. I think the production is magnificent. I Forgot More Than You'll Ever Know is a hauntingly beautiful cover, bro. The harmonies and the vocals on this song are so good. I just love Copper Kettle, which is a Joan Baez song, which is also really interesting that he's doing a Joan Baez song after he's married. The relationship between Joan Baez and Bob Dylan as like ex-lovers, and how they continue to play with each other's material and like sing each other's songs is really, really interesting. Copper Kettle, I think, is great, and I love singing the "We ain't paid no whiskey tax since 1792." I could talk about this album all day. And this is one that it wasn't my favorite the first time I listened to it, but it's really grown on me. I love this album, and for me that's an S tier. And if you're like a Dylan head that's like, how could you put Self-Portrait in S tier and Blood on the Tracks in B tier? Art is subjective. This album just really resonates with me. And you should be happy that Dylan has enough great music to speak to different people in a variety of different ways and through a variety of different albums. So yeah. Okay, I said Self-Portrait was peak of the country era. This is the actual peak of the country era, just like I like this album slightly less, but it's still an absolute classic. I like it better every time. I think the version of North Country Fair with Johnny Cash is better than the original. Lay Lady Lay. Oh, the guitars on that song are so good. Yeah, just the sound of this album is so good. I love his smooth country voice. It's so unique and so interesting. I guess some of the like faster paced songs, the kind of honky tonk songs, don't speak to me quite as much, but I absolutely especially love the ballads on here. It would have been one thing if Dylan changed genres once. But I think this album, Nashville Skyline, really makes him the artist that he is, where it's like, no, it's not like he just changed once. He has continued to evolve and has continued to expand, explore new territory, and I think this album is a great example of that. And I'm putting it in A+. I will say, maybe it's just slightly under Dylan. I think that probably the highs on Nashville Skyline are higher than the highs of Dylan, but I think that Dylan is, to me, more consistently good, whereas there's just a few, I wouldn't say duds on Nashville Skyline, but just a few songs that like Peggy Day, for example, I just like a little bit less. John Wesley Harding, Really good writing, not great execution. I want to appreciate that, you know, he tried a more bare bones recording approach. Like it's not the perfectionism of something like Blonde on Blonde. And I want to appreciate that he took a more like minimalistic approach with this album, and that the production and the instruments are just like, there's much less. But at the end of the day, to me, it does make the album feel very samey. The songs kind of blend into each other a little too much for me. And even though the writing on all of them is good, it's like, I just don't know if it really holds my interest for the whole runtime. So it's like, if I listen to the songs in isolation, I'll like them all. Obviously, All Along the Watchtower is really good. A lot of biblical imagery on this album that I can definitely get down with. Yeah, it's just not my favorite. It's just not as punchy as I think it should have been. And for that reason, I'm putting it at the bottom of B tier. Hey, the shot changed. Sorry, my camera stopped recording while I was talking about Blonde on Blonde, but we could use a little bit of a change up anyway. Blonde on Blonde, undeniable S tier. I would say some of my absolute favorite Bob Dylan songs are on here. Visions of Johanna, Leopard Skin Pillbox Hat is such a fun, silly song. One of my favorite, like, Dylan high energy type songs. I think I typically prefer Dylan ballads. Not to say that I don't like his other stuff, but the ballads is where he really gets me. But Leopard Skin Pillbox Hat is like such a great fun song. But speaking of ballads, Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowlands is absolutely beautiful. I really do love his like long outros. I think they close off the ride of his albums really, really well. I didn't mention Sarah on Desire. That's another great long outro. This album is what Bob Dylan sounds like in my head. Like, this is the quintessential album. That's not to say it's my absolute undeniable favorite. Again, some days it might be. All of the S tiers, you know, depends on the day. It's such a cohesive album. This album is long-ish, but it earns its length. Rainy Day Women is such a just bonkers way to open the album. Back in the day, it was not my absolute favorite. Not to say it was ever something I didn't like. I think when I first got into Bob Dylan, Highway 61, which we're going to get into next, was my absolute favorite. But I think this album has just been able to grow on me so much more, and it just continues to feel fresh. Every time I listen to it, like a new song sticks out to me that hadn't before. The poetry is beautiful. The instrumentation is quirky, it's unique, it's groovy, it's fun, it's just so enjoyable. And for that reason, we gotta put Blonde on Blonde in S tier. Anyway, back to normal Jake. Highway 61 Revisited, great album. I'd put it in A tier. Obviously, Like a Rolling Stone, banger. Ballad of a Thin Man, banger. I love Queen Jane. I love Desolation Row. Yeah, all these are great songs. I don't really care for Tombstone Blues. And some of those kind of like, maybe more like folky, bluesy moments I don't particularly care for on the album, which holds it back just a little bit for me from being S tier, but it's still a fantastic album that you need to listen to. And I feel somewhat similarly about Bringing It All Back Home. That album is very similar to Highway 61, just like there's a few more, you know, like folk songs at the end. Lots of great songs in this one. Outlaw Blues really stuck out to me on this most recent listen. She Belongs to Me also. There's so many great songs. I mean, Subterranean Homesick Blues, Gates of Eden, Mr. Tambourine Man, classic. I forget if it's On the Road Again or Bob Dylan's 115th Dream. Maybe both of them that don't like stick out to me as much, but it's still a really good album. Not quite as good as Blonde on Blonde to me, but really good. Oh, and one more thing that I wanted to say about Bringing It All Back Home that I did not mention. This album, there's moments that almost feel like rap. He even says, the vagabond that's rapping at your door. Sometimes people call Bob Dylan a prophet. Yeah, and obviously not with the instrumentals, right? But like Subterranean Homesick Blues and It's All Right Ma, I'm Only Bleeding. He's just performing these lyrics so fast, and it really does have a similar flow to a lot of rap music, and I think it's like really, really cool. I'm sure that's not the most original take in the world. I know I'm not the first person to compare Subterranean Homesick Blues to hip-hop. This album does feel very ahead of its time, at least vocally. Also, I did not mention It's All Over Now, Baby Blue. Beautiful song. Another side of Bob Dylan. So I put this one in A, and honestly, like, depending on the mood, it might go in B. It Ain't Me Babe, great. There's also some like really funny moments on this album that I appreciate. The biggest thing holding this album back is he should have made it after he went electric. This one I think could really benefit from some production, some more instruments. Some of them do work really well as folk songs. I think a lot of these songs would have been made just a little bit better if he wasn't making them folk songs. And I think that's ultimately what holds it back, but I do think that it's still a really good album with some great songs. Just doesn't quite live up to what would come immediately after and what came immediately before, which is Times They Are A-Changin', and Times They Are A-Changin' is, you know, like I said, the one that's my favorite might change day to day. Times They Are Changing, I would maybe say is his like objective best. This album, production would ruin it. And I think it is so rare and so hard to make an album as stripped back and as minimalist as this, and to make it feel consistently engaging and striking. But I mean, Bob Dylan pulled it off with Times They Are Changin'. The protest songs on this one are definitely his deepest, in my opinion, with God on Our Side and The Lonesome Death of Poor Hattie Carroll. Just so heartbreaking and so profound. And the love songs too, you know, like I think One Too Many Mornings is one of his best songs ever. It's so, the writing on that one, the imagery is just so vivid and so clear. It's just a beautiful, beautiful song. This album is just haunting. The guitar playing is amazing. This album is maybe what I would recommend to everyone because his voice sounds maybe the best on it. It's maybe the most accessible album, but it's also probably his deepest, most powerful, hard-hitting lyrical album. You know, the times they are changing, and they have changed since the 60s, but they haven't changed enough for these songs not to still be relevant. Yeah, man, they just resonate a lot, and this album is just beautiful. It's one of the best albums of all time. What can I say? And Freewheelin' is very similar. I'll save you the suspense. I'd put this in A+. I think this has a very similar thing where, like, Masters of War, man, it's just still so relevant. You play with my world like it's your little toy. It's fierce, man. And it really, like, just gets to your heart. Hard Rain's Gonna Fall. I love the guitar playing on Down the Highway. This album is just full of amazing, beautiful songs. Blown in the Wind is obviously the most classic. North Country Fair also. Carina Carina really stuck out to me on the most recent listen. The very light left-panned drums do so much for that track. That little bit of just, like, more instrumentation just makes it so much more enjoyable to listen to. It's so pleasant. The only thing that holds it back for me is I really could do without the last two songs. It's not necessarily to say those two songs are bad. I mean, they're definitely not my favorite, but like, I think Times They Are A-Changin' is so good because it is so focused. It knows exactly what it is, and it gets out when it's done. I think Freewheelin' is close to that, but then there's just a few songs of Dylan screwing around a little bit, and I'm all for Dylan screwing around, but I do think the songs where he's doing that hold it back a little bit on this album. So it's not my absolute favorite, but I mean, some of these songs are absolute S tier. Obviously, some of the greatest folk songs ever written, so you gotta respect it. You know, I have this at the bottom of A+ right here, but this definitely could move up, maybe move down some days, but I mean, this one is very special. There's some things in it that hold it back for me, but sometimes albums that are a little bit imperfect innately have a sense of like being able to grow on you in a way and stick with you, and have your feelings on them change in a way that like a perfect album maybe doesn't. So, okay, last but not least, we have the self-titled. This is mostly just covers. I was reading some of his early lyrics last night, and he really did like not start out that good. It was kind of interesting to see just like how simple some of his like early songwriting is. With that being said, Song to Woody, great like tribute to a hero song. The way that that song is incorporated in A Complete Unknown, I think is honestly one of the best scenes of the movie. I love the kind of relationship that the biopic builds between Bob and Woody Guthrie. I think that's like a beautiful element of that film. And I really do like that movie, actually. Timothée Chalamet did a great job. I love you, Timothée Chalamet. So I think this album has some really good moments, but we don't have to kid ourselves. It's not one of his best. His cover of Rising Sun is obviously great, and there's a few other songs I think are really special. I think maybe these songs were meant to be heard in a live folk music setting, more so there than on an album. So I think this album is pretty good. I'd put it in B tier, maybe about here. Again, could change. Good album, but definitely not his best. And either way is a really cool just like thing to have where, you know, you kind of see like the early days before he became the superstar, you know, greatest songwriter of all time. I think it's a cool kind of relic of a certain period of this artist's life. So that's the list. We did it. I need to eat. Tell me your favorite Bob Dylan albums and why you like them, and if there's any that I don't like that you really like, I'm really curious to hear why you enjoy them and maybe what I'm missing. So yeah, Thanks for sitting with me while I do this. Again, if you have not seen the other video that I did about seeing Bob Dylan live, I recommend you checking that out. You should check out some of my music also, Jake Sandvik, on all streaming platforms. You can listen to my newish album, There's Somewhere I Do. New music coming soon. Hit subscribe, like, share, all that stuff, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.